Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1132 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. Just when I thought I was out, Oda reeled me back in. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about with this chapter, but I think first and foremost is the feeling of magic, the feeling of what the hell is wrong with Elbaf has returned. The Straw Hats and the Giants literally rode on a rainbow. That actually happened. That is now officially canon. As a side note, we kind of predicted this years ago. Strong emphasis on kind of because it was kind of right, but it's also kind of we don't really know yet. But we have the scene with Apu, I believe it was during the time skip where they're on a random island and they're running. They end up running over a cliff. And instead of falling to the water below, they just keep going, and suddenly they're running on the air. Obviously, there are some characters in the story of One Piece that can actually run on air. Sanji, there's Skywalk, this is an actual technique, but it's not something that Apu and his crew can do. It's not how this scene was described. It's like the air was literally solid, like a road. Totally invisible, but somehow there. This scene kind of stands out because we're hundreds of chapters from when this happened, and yet this has not been explained. So with our tinfoil hats firmly on again, some years ago, we speculated a connection between this and Norse mythology, that this could be something related to the Rainbow Road. There was actually something that Apu and his crew were running on. It just was invisible for some reason. I'm going to be honest with you guys, I still like this theory. Obviously, in this chapter, it is not confirmed that there's any connection whatsoever between the phenomenon with Apu and what we see in Elbaf, but now we know, like, rainbows are just light, right? It's refracted light. That's what they explained in the chapter, but somehow, they can make it solid. I'm now mentally developing this headcanon that during the time of the Void Century, the Ancient Kingdom developed all of these rainbow roads across the country that are still there, and you need what the Elbaf giants describe as a painter to be able to properly see it. And just straight up, even the name painter adds some level of credibility to the theory. It's because it creates the impression that the giants painted the rainbow. Maybe before they did this, it was just invisible, but still there. But yeah, I don't want to get too lost in headcanon because we just don't know right now, and there's lots of things that are possible. It's possible that the painter, which appears almost like this glass cube or a glass prism, it just creates the Rainbow Road. But if I had to say something that I feel like is definitively true and not just pure speculation, I think that there's going to be some components of lost technology with Elbaf. That's the impression this chapter gives me. We got an incredibly beautiful visual of Elbaf in this chapter, specifically the sun level or the sun realm, which is on the tree. But if you take a moment and just pour at the details of this island, it's not very primitive. Specifically, what I'm talking about is this house. Look at this house. I'll show it on the screen as well. And below there, they've carved a building inside of the land, which creates the impression that this whole area that they live on, all of the ground, is a man-made platform. Or to think about it in a different way, remember Skypiea, right? Skypiea did not have any actual land. The only reason why land existed up in Skypiea is because half of the island of Jaya was knocked up into the sky by the knockup stream. I really think that we should be comparing Skypiea and Elbaf, not least of which is because we're finding Sky Cloud exists here. But this is a tree, right? So where did the landmass that everyone lives on come from? They would have literally had to haul up the rock, which doesn't make any sense. So if you have a building carved into what appears to be solid stone, it just seems likely to me that that stone was not originally there. So Elbaf isn't just pure fantasy in terms of wow, this island is majestic. I think that in order to create it, it requires some technical prowess on the level or greater than Water 7. I think that it's a marvel of technology. So obviously Elbaf and the Ancient Kingdom, which we know is technologically advanced, has some history, so that's why I'm bringing it up. But I'm also bringing it up because this has just been on my mind, right? But now that we have a literal rainbow road, and we know that a rainbow is essentially light, Elbaf has discovered a way to make light solid. And also in the same chapter, we see Lilith react to the rainbow road, and she's familiar with it. She's seen it before. Which takes my mind back to the last arc, which was related to technology, which was Egghead. One of the first things that we saw in Egghead was giant holograms, and it appeared as if Vegapunk was attempting to create technology to interact with the holograms. The hologram, just the same as the rainbow, is just made of light. He was trying to make light solid. Now that we know that Lilith and the other Vegapunks have been here and have seen it, right, we now know why Vegapunk was experimenting with solid light. Just the same as nearly everything else that Vegapunk discovered or invented, it had some basis in things that the Ancient Kingdom had already created. But as a side note, it's kind of on point and horrifying to think that what Vegapunk was really trying to do with the giant holograms is press a button and make them real as the Rainbow Road that these Strats were traveling on. That technology, I'm just telling you guys, that technology has a future as an incredible destructive weapon, which I guess is maybe why the world government was financing it. Anyway, guys, I think that something is here. I think that this technology, overanalyzing it, has merit, because I really think that it's going to end up playing a larger role, whether in the current story or in the past. I feel like I've expressed this before, some things are related to it before, but it probably bears repeating that Buddhism is, I think the story of One Piece is a parable of Buddhism. I think that the whole story is structured around Buddhist teachings. The relationship between matter and energy is interesting. I suppose the point is that in postmodern science and theology, there's often a connection made between light, matter, and the spirit. In spiritual traditions across the world and various theologies, light is equated to divinity. In Christianity, Christ is the light within all living beings. Likewise, in Buddhism, the Buddha is always shining, always enlightening trees, grass, birds, human beings, and so on, always emitting light. Furthermore, in Buddhism, light is a metaphor for enlightening itself, enlightening to become light. And on many levels, this interpretation works well with modern-day science. Light is energy, and energy exists in every atom. So there's light that exists within you. Or perhaps in a way that people would better be able to understand, think about heat. Every human body emits heat. Heat or infrared radiation is light. But the general idea of all of this is something like the cosmic Buddha. Whether it's the kingdom of light from Christianity or the kingdom of God or nirvana in Buddhism, the final resting place for our souls is in a state similar to light. You could literally talk about this for hours. The Buddha taught a meditation called the perception of light, which could be used to develop something like psychic powers. Light is basically seen as the key to everything. Many believe that our consciousness, our spirits, our souls are light. A fundamental teaching in Buddhism is the luminous mind or clear light. So in a way, you can think about the light of our souls being trapped within our physical bodies, which, scientifically speaking, cannot reach the speed of light, and therefore cannot become light, because we possess mass or matter, which acts like a cage. Light fundamentally cannot possess mass. This is a defining characteristic of light. I hope that this wasn't too much for you guys to chew on right now, but it just seems relevant right now when talking about light, Elbaph, and light becoming matter. I think that Oda devised a focus for this science in the story of One Piece because of the story's relevance to Buddhism. Luffy, the sun god, is a god of light. Going to Zoro in Alabasta, he heard the breath of all things. In this near-death state, as ruins crumble all around him, everything had a kind of voice or existence, and he could sense it. And I think that it's meant to relate to a concept in Buddhism that everything, even like the rocks, blade of grass, everything has its own consciousness, i.e. everything has its own light. And the end goal for everything is to become light. So making light tangible like matter, I think, is pretty significant. Reality in the story of One Piece is being blurred. But I promise you that I didn't bring up all this science stuff just to go on a wild tangent because I felt like it. I actually felt like it was important to bring this up for the discussion I wanted to have about some of the other mysteries from this chapter. Like I said at the very beginning of the review, the feeling of wonder, of like magic, of what the hell is going on in Elbaf has returned. And a lot of that had to do with the final panels of this chapter. So we get some narrator scrolls. They say, to be in the presence of the Gargantuan is to know emotion. Who can possibly put this sight into words that convey its grandeur? Plants, trees, vines, flowers, insects, fish, birds, and animals. Everything is breathtakingly huge. Adventurers, do not regret your lost time here. I want to focus on this for just one moment. Adventurers, do not regret your lost time here. We'll return to this. However, if there is one message you take away from my account of the gigantic and mystical land of Elbaf, let it be this word of warning. Do not overstay your welcome here. Louis Arnott, Explorer. So we've actually heard the name Louis Arnott before, and it comes from a book known as Bragman that we were first introduced to when we first met the giants in Little Garden. Basically, my impression is that there was adventurers over a long period of time which compiled stories of their adventures across the world, which later became known as fiction. But as we know, is most definitely fact. But anyway, if you had to define Little Garden, I think that the general premise of that arc, as Oda designed it, was that it is an island trapped in time. While the rest of the world around it has advanced, that island stayed the same, which is why dinosaurs still existed there. So more obviously, the question that we should be asking at the conclusion of the chapter is, what exactly is Lewis Arnott warning adventurers about Elbaph? And obviously, an infinite number of possibilities most likely exist. But to me, it seems kind of obvious. Elbaph, the same as Little Garden, is trapped in time. Lewis Arnott's words here seem to me to be a clue. Adventurers, do not regret your lost time here. He's basically describing Elbaph as the Garden of Eden. This is the most beautiful country in the world. It is a paradise, which is how Little Garden got its name. It's the Little Garden of Eden. There is a similarity between these two islands. But even more than that, we begin the arc of Elbaph with these strats inside of the diorama, and at the time, as the chapters were going by, we made a lot of comparisons to the story of Alice in Wonderland. Wonderland, likewise, was a place that was lost in time. But I suppose for all of this to work in the way that I'm actually saying it, it's kind of working in the reverse way. For adventurers to have lost time while in Elbaph suggests that time is moving faster in the outside world. And hey, to bring this all the way back home, you can relate this back to the science of light. The closer that you get to the speed of light, time dilates, or slows down. So Elbaph as the Garden of Eden, or the Kingdom of Light, brings people closer to light, which slows down time. Obviously, if this is the case, we still have some questions that need answering. For instance, what is the precise relationship between the time spent in Elbaph versus the time spent outside of Elbaph? Like that, we would need a definitive answer for that. We see a character from the island of Elbaph remark that Dory, Brokey, and crew have been gone for a while. What precisely did she mean by that? Did she expect them to be gone for a few hours and it ended up being over a day? Or was it like literal the exact time frame that everything occurred? We do not know. But for sure, this idea seems plausible to me. I don't think that anything debunks it. And as a plot device, this would be, oh my god, mind-blowingly genius. Because while the Strats are exploring Elbaph, getting lost in Wonderland, things around the world, around Elbaph, might drastically change, depending on how long they stay. Again, the precise ratio of time matters a lot. It could be like 1 to 2, so if you spend 1 month in Elbaph, 2 months pass in the real world. But the more that you change this equation, the greater the effect. Honestly, you might be able to follow Shanks' adventure recently in the story to get perhaps a better idea. If the idea is true, 1 day in Elbaph could equate to 10 days. So then staying in Elbaph for 1 year would equal 10 years. And that's when your eyes start to go wide. But yeah, it goes without saying, guys, for now, I'm totally bought in on this theory, but of course, there's a possibility that it is something else. But as for other ideas as to what Lewis Arnott's warning could be, I mean, frankly, I don't have a lot of good ideas. The only other thing that really comes to mind is an emphasis on the island of Elbaph being known as Warland. Something like you stay too long and you get caught up in Elbaph's war, which happens frequently, or something. But yeah, guys, totally open to requests right now. If you have any great ideas, feel free to share them in the comments because I'd be interested to read other perspectives. But I just want to make sure that I make this clear. When you're talking about light, you're talking about reality. We only see because of light, and optical illusions are a thing. As Albert Einstein said, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. The quote is essentially talking about how our perception of reality can be influenced by what we see, which is often shaped by light and its tricks on our eyes. So if there's some kind of light-related property of the island of Elbaph itself, so much so that, like, the island is time dilated because of its relationship with light, you could have other related and wacky phenomena, such as cats spontaneously becoming lions, and then spontaneously reverting back, as an example. Just something to keep in mind. But yeah, I suppose it goes without saying that this was another incredible chapter of One Piece in terms of the feeling of wonder. Visiting the island of Elbaph felt special, like just a few other arcs in the story of One Piece. One of those islands being the Sky Islands in Skypiea. I'm really excited to find out that there are indeed 3 levels to the current island of Elbaf. The underworld seems to be the bottom sea level. Up on the tree where the giants of Elbaf live is the sun level, but we're told of a 3rd level which exists up above, which is known as the astral level. Astral relating to stars. So it could still be true that the very top level of Elbaf is connected to all of the other sky islands that exist in the world of One Piece. This was a theory that we had for a long time, but Gonfall was very surprised that the strats arrived in Skypiea via the Knockup Stream because there's like a normal way that most adventurers or travelers reach Skypiea. The Summit of Far West. I always thought that the Summit of Far West could end up being Elbaf and the giant tree that we thought was there. The theory is still alive. This theory also worked incredibly well with the fable or the myth of Jack and the Giant Beanstalk. And the idea is that Giant Jack, the beanstalk that we found in Skypiea, is actually like its root is in some island on the Blue Sea, potentially Elbaf. But I understand that some people have a problem conceptualizing this theory because we encountered Skypiea from traveling in Jaya, which is in the Paradise portion of the Grand Line. So all the way from Paradise to the New World in Elbaf, you would have to have a continuous string of sky islands for them to be connected. So you would like see the sky islands more regularly from across the world. Right, if you remember back to Jaya, when the sky islands appeared overhead, it was like, that was a noteworthy event where the sky went entirely black. So there's several ways to think about it. First, you could think about these sky islands as swinging across the world so they don't stay in the same location, and potentially you could have parts of it move over different parts of the world. Because remember, they are clouds. You could even potentially think about it like the Milky Way galaxy. You know the spiral arms of the Milky Way? The part of the sky islands that is Skypiea separates from the whole and becomes an arm. But if the sky islands were literally directly above Elbaf, the fact that Elbaf has sunlight doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So maybe, regardless, you have to get a bit creative. I thought that it was interesting in the chapter they explained that the sun level of Elbaf is called this because this is where the light shines. It kind of gives me the impression that on the astral level above, the sun does not shine. It's quite possibly in some kind of eternal night, which would why it'd be called the astral level. Astral meaning stars. You can only see the stars at night. As I said before, there could be something incredibly strange about the island of Elbaf itself regarding light. And I'm now seriously wondering whether the Sky Islands exist in some other dimension. This is something that has occurred relatively frequently throughout the story of One Piece, mainly with devil fruits, but this is a thing. There are many different kinds of dimensions that just exist. The Door fruit, or the Door Realm, the Mirror Realm, the Uta World. There may only be certain times or places in which somebody has the ability to actually enter the Skyland. But yeah, good God, the tinfoil here, guys, is securely fixed. I really shouldn't have gone down that rabbit hole. But you know what? F it. I just really want us to, at some point in time, adventure and discover the summit of High West. The normal way that Gonfal said that one would reach the Sky Islands. But yeah, aside from this, the chapter was just really fun. I enjoyed reading it, it was lighthearted and just quintessential feel-good vibes. I loved seeing Hyrogin and Dorian Brogy interact, and Gerd, and obviously at some point in time it's going to turn for the worst. I mean, at the same time that we have all these feel-good vibes, there's this lingering impression that there's a certain number of giants which are against humans, such as Road. I'm pretty sure that that will come up. But for now, I'm just having a blast. And the only other question that we are left with is whether or not Luffy freed Loki, which we still do not know. But as always, guys, I'm curious as to what you think, whether you noticed something from the chapter that I might have missed. Just share your thoughts. If you're interested, check out my book, The Booms. Link is in the description. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.